What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kind of Funny Community Podcast Day. I am one of your guests, Greg Miller. If you weren't paying attention back in January 2020 on Kind of Funny Day 2021, right? This freaking goddamn pandemic. 2021, we did a thing on the thermometer that was Greg would do a day of community podcast where he would open up a submission form. People would submit their podcast, and then he would choose them to go on, and we would do a whole bunch of them. And we said, that was great. And then we hit another one and we said, we'll do 2 of those days. And we said, that's great. And then Jen got pregnant and like my life became doctor's appointments and then work and then getting ready for the baby and a million other things. And so kind of didn't. And then Benjamin came. So we didn't do the community podcast days in 2021. But when I came back with more venom than ever, Kevin, we decided it was time to do these community podcast days. So this is community podcast day number 1. I opened up a free post on patreon.com/kindoffunny, patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. If you had a podcast, you could come through and you could submit on the Google form saying, hey, I'd like to get Greg on my podcast. I read through the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of submissions and narrowed it down to 10 podcasts. Today we're doing 5. You're going to get 5 different community podcasts today. Then in about a month, I actually screwed up my dates and it's going to be March, I think. We're going to do 5 more of them, each bringing something different to the table, a different kind of conversation, and a podcast I've never been on. That was very important to me. And so today you get to watch the sausage get made as we will just record podcasts, bring people in on Discord, hang out with them, and do these podcasts hour by hour with a 1 lunch break coming up after the second show. So I guess in 2 hours I'm taking a lunch break, and then I'm back for 3 more. I encourage you to hang out. I encourage you to drop follows. I encourage you to go to Spotify's and rate these people and sub with them and hang out and support your fellow kind of funny best friends. And if you're in the chat, the thing I want you to do is, of course, remember, be nice. I know you're kind of funny best friends and you would normally do that, but keep in mind that a lot of these people, you know, are part-time podcasters and I'm sure they're nervous. This is probably the biggest audience they've ever had. And so let's just be cool and fulfilling and nice to each other and have a great day together. So without further ado, Kevin, switch it over to the Nerd Today podcast. Carlos, the floor is yours. You're muted.
Yep, you're muted.
Definitely. See, I get in the kind of funny server, and then I just fill in the time like you guys would normally.
I love it. You're nailed.
Yeah, it's like I've always been here. Exactly. So, restart. This is the Nerd Today podcast. This will be my episode 50, and it is a discussion with Greg Miller about the meaning of Superman. I also want to just mention, just kind of off script, thank you guys for this opportunity. Thank you, Greg, for having me on here. It means a lot. Thank you from me and my wife as well. Your chicken wing recipe. We think that's the reason why our son was born, because we wanted him out at night. Spicy. You eat something spicy as a pregnant woman. Usually kind of helps. We had those wings that night. Then he was born.
Oh my God. I got to record the recipe and put that in there, because there's a whole pizza place out here in the Bay Area that their whole thing is the labor pizza, that if you eat this, you're guaranteed to go if you're pregnant, not if you're a sick person.
Topically as well, his name's Connor after Connor
dude,
Kent.
I'm jealous. That's great. That's cool. Now let me ask you this then. Of course, I know Nerd Today fans have no problem, and they're keeping up here. They know you well. We're talking about Superman here for people watching live on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. Does your wife like Superman? That's a no. Okay, great.
Yeah, she likes the newer stuff, right? She likes Man of Steel, like BVS,
sure, okay,
like Justice League, Wonder Woman, all the like DCEU she likes.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm not like, I made her go to see Superman Returns. Like that was more for me than her. And she's amazing, absolutely awesome, love of my life.
Movie without one punch being thrown, yeah.
yeah. Still oddly like a really good movie for me, which I have issues with it.
Of course.
I did want the punching, and then when we got it in Man of Steel, everyone was complaining about it. I'm like, this is what you wanted.
Yeah, no, I know.
Nobody
can be happy with anything, right? No,
exactly.
I need to go back. I haven't watched Superman Returns in, I mean, honestly, probably a decade and a half, if not 2. Like, well, I guess that doesn't time out. So a decade and a half, probably. Because I remember the moment of having it. Yeah, it must have been like 15 years, because I remember watching it in San Francisco and sitting there and just ranting and raving. I'm like, look at how bad Kate Bosworth is acting here. This doesn't make sense. And I finally had that moment of like, I hate this movie. Like, I've watched this so many times and I want to love it. Brandon Routh is great, right? Like, I love the thing.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, at the time, we didn't know he was a dirtbag, but Kevin Spacey was good as Luthor, I thought, at the time. We didn't know he was a dirtbag. I liked Bryan Singer's directing at the time.
Exactly.
This movie didn't age well. Kate Bosworth, keep your eye on her, everybody. But it was that thing of like, sitting there and having that realization of like, oh my god, like I don't like this movie, because it was definitely that movie I went and saw. And I remember I was working at the newspaper at the time, the Columbia Daily Tribune, and they did a whole at the big deal at the time, these multimedia projects they would do. And so they had a photographer follow me, and then a reporter also who was and even though I worked there, reporter who was recording my initial thoughts coming out of the theater, and then they put it all together. And there's in there, it's me and my friend Bowen just going back and forth, and me being like, yeah, this and but I liked it, but then that, I don't know about, and it was just this back and forth thing of like,
Yeah.
like, and then you listen to it with that, I'm like, oh, I didn't like this movie at all, but I was trying to tell myself I did.
I like sections of that movie, that's why I always like
The plane scene, him
yeah, the plane scene's absolutely
yeah,
saying the line like, hey, planes are still, the safest way to travel
yeah.
statistically and stuff, like just embodying, but like making it his own, like a Christopher Reeve version, like it being a sequel.
And this is a bold take that I'm making up on the fly, but in a lot of ways, I think it was ahead of its time. Like, as we are dealing now with multiverse and, all right, cool, Michael Keaton's going to be in this, and he's Batman 89, but this isn't that universe, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think it was, comic book movies weren't where they are now. And so that was a hard thing for people to truly understand, outside of like you and me, who I'm sure I was watching the Bryan Singer like vlogs he was doing at the time.
Me as well, yeah.
Dropped. I knew I was reading tie-in comic books. Like I was so juiced up on information for this, man. And so
I needed it.
Go there and then have to try to explain to people. I'm like, oh well, this is a sequel to the Christopher. Well, it's a sequel to number 2, but don't ignore 3 and 4. But like it was like so many people.
Nuclear Man never happened.
What are you talking about? And it's like nowadays that's totally makes sense, right? You see sequels to individual movies all the time. I feel like
exactly.
But at the time, it was such a dense concept that it got killed, in its crib. I really would have liked to have seen what they were going to do in the second one, because I remember Singer being like, it's going to be Wrath of Khan style action, and I think they again left in a way that people weren't prepared for the time, left it in such an interesting spot. All right, like Superman has a kid, and here he is, and this is the thing, and he just found out, and I kept waiting throughout the movie for Cyclops, James Marsden, James Marsden. I kept waiting for him to turn out to be bad, and it turns out he's a nice guy, and it's like
that made it so hard. Like it made it like a difficulty, right? You're like, well, how are you gonna wrap your head around this, right?
And that was like and it was like, I'm not saying it was like deep as an ocean or something, or like it's grapes of wrath out here, but it was like, wow, this is an interesting thing for a comic book movie to wrestle with. Of like, cool, now Superman's just left in this really weird place, but Lois has been left in this weird place for 5 years, and and it's like, I would have liked to have seen what they were going to do with it, but it never happened. And then, like you said, here's Man of Steel. We're just going to punch each other in the cornfield, and nobody takes any damage. Doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all. Just Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Which, for the anime lover in me, awesome. Loved it. I thought, I liked a lot of that as well. But with Superman Returns, I love Ralph so much. I'm glad that he got to like have his swan song with the Crisis event and like finally close that character out.
How good did he look?
Oh my god, just the Kingdom Come S, man.
I never thought I would see that in a million years.
Exactly. And it fits so perfectly with the storyline created. And one of my favorite things is that they did with that is having him go in and be like, hey, I lost my Jason, my Lois to the Joker. And spoilers, if you guys haven't caught up with all the Flash stuff and just Crisis event in general. Sorry, it's on Netflix. Watch it. It's amazing. Tom Welling's in there as well. Probably the best Superman, which we'll get into because we have similar views.
Hell yeah.
But like having him just wrestle with that and then still be Superman. Never stop. That just speaks to his character and how well they captured him in those Crisis events. Just to have Brandon Routh be like, I lost everything that I loved. And yeah, I wear the black S and like I am sad, but you know what? I still do it. I have to still be Superman. The world still needs Superman.
And that's the thing about it, like the CW verse, the Arrowverse, it gets a lot of shit from people. And of course, good and justified reasons for sure of Monsters of the Week and where are we going with these people. But sometimes they do stuff like that where they nail it. And I remember it so well from what it would have been early 2000s, mid 2000s, I guess, actually. Yeah, mid 2000s, early 2010s, maybe. Superman books, right? Where he did wear the black S for a while. And it was like really delved into of like him wrestling with this darkness about it. And then it being a big deal when he put back on the yellow, right? And like, I forget, I don't remember what issue or what book, but I remember a conversation with a kid on a swing set where he was explaining it to him why he was wearing the darkness and why then he went back to the light.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to, like you're saying, have that moment of him in the Kingdom Come suit in the Crisis stuff we saw, but then get that final frame of him doing the Reeve, fly
Yeah.
above
Oh
the earth
God.
and wink at the camera and be wearing the yellow. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. You know what? I want to ask a question that's kind of topical to what just talking about Brendan
About
Routh and
time, because
stuff.
we've just been ranting about
I know,
Superman for
exactly.
days. I was like, oh shit, he has a plan for this podcast. I probably shouldn't just be doing this.
I was gonna say, I was like, this feels like one of my wrestling podcasts, Apron Work. By the way, follow, sub, all that stuff.
Get the shout outs,
To that, and then to me as well, just my personal stuff. But we rant on that show all the time anyway, so trust me, this is similar to that. So with Superman Returns, something that always touched me, and it was, being of a person of color, I latched on to Superman like quickly. I mean, obviously born in America, the island my people are from is Puerto Rico, so we are an American colony and stuff. Like, there's worse, like, people in worse situations and everything, but I just held on to him and his struggle for being different and almost feeling alone. I didn't get to grow up with my siblings, for family reasons and stuff. I found them later on in life, which is awesome. But when he's talking to Jason while he's sleeping is by far the movie-wise the most incredible moment for me. I didn't know why it would at the time. Like, it just didn't click. I had no children at the time. And it wasn't until I had my son Connor. Obviously I mentioned in the top of the show, named after Connor Kent, the
hell yeah,
best Superboy ever.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the shirt,
Nice,
rocking the shirt. I held him in my arms, and my wife's asleep. She's finally getting rest after everything, and
you're gonna break my heart. You're doing it. Okay.
Yeah, and it just clicked, right?
For sure.
And it's just me and him. Nobody else in the room, and I just repeat the lines like, you'll be different, people will worry about you, and all, like, just the basic gist of like what Jor-El told, Kal-El, and Kal-El now is telling Jason. And I'm like tearing up holding this baby, and I'm like, wow, A, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever done in my life. B, it was like the ceiling for me, like why I love Superman so much. It's like he has always been somebody to me that I related to, where so many people feel like they can't relate to, right? He's too powerful, all this bullshit. Like he doesn't have, like, his villains suck or whatever. Like, Lex Luthor is an awesome villain. Come on, guys.
For sure.
All this other shit, like they don't like relate to him for some way, and I relate to him, and not because of his power set, not because he's the guy who will do the right thing at the right time, and he, for a lot of it, feels so alone. And then I love when he has somebody like Lois, and they have a kid, Jonathan, and I love those stories more because now I'm a dad. But like, what to the whole rigmarole thing? What's the nerdiest thing you've done, like, that no one's ever seen that's like Superman related?
Well, a memory I've never shared because it's so fresh, and we just haven't gotten around to it, that you'll get exclusively here, is like a very similar thing to what you just talked about with your speech, right? Where Jen and I announced we're pregnant. We were, gonna have a baby shower, but then this little thing called Delta started up, right? And so it was like, oop, pull the plug on that. We're not gonna risk it. We're not gonna do it. That's over with. And so Joey, and I think a couple other people, kind of funny, Roger as an editor and stuff, hit up all of our friends that were going to come, and people who obviously wouldn't have been able to come because of distance and everything else, and got them to record little video messages for us. And then they surprise dropped it on us. And, usually when something surprise happens around Kind of Funny, I'm involved in some degree. It's usually, me or Joey or whatever, or it's a stupid Greg bit just to get Nick's problem. But you know what I mean? I'm the one to, when we announce the pregnancy, I'm always trying to surprise people. And in the run up to this, and the disappointment of the shower, but then also the excitement of the baby, and like, you've been there, ultrasounds, meetings, packages are coming, family members are getting their final visits in before, and then planning their like, there's so much happening that, like, when we were sitting here on a Saturday and Joey or maybe Friday night, Joey texted this YouTube link to an unlisted video, I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I didn't expect, and I knew it was going to destroy us. I knew it was going to devastate us. And so we came down here and we were watching it later that night when we were ready to cry. And I'm going at a good pace and I'm doing fine. I'm a big emotional baby. Everybody knows. But it was Cameron Cuff that broke me, where he got on there, right? And he totally, Cameron, if Cameron was here, he'd fit right in with you and me in terms of his love of Superman and his knowledge base of Superman. And he did the same thing of like, congratulations and all that jazz. But he's like, I want to speak directly to Gregor. Like, you know what I mean? There's a saying on Krypton, right? Like, the father becomes the son, the father, and like, and he went into what all that means and and I was
Oh,
fucking
look
bawling.
already. Yeah.
I know, I was just
Yeah.
bawling, because obviously I love Cam so much, let alone the fact that he's a kind of funny best friend and he came from the community, and then he's obviously such a successful actor. He's such a successful part of DC now. It's like all these different things
Yeah.
wrapped up in it, but to have, there he is, a
Yeah.
member of the House of L telling me all this stuff. It
Yeah.
was like
It
devastating
hits
in the best way.
different, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And so like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's the, never before seen footage, the stuff I've talked about before, but I hang out with, right? Is like, I went to Catholic school my entire life until I went to the University of Missouri, right? I was in a uniform kindergarten through 12th grade. Yeah. Senior year of high school.
Same. Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, no matter, and this is not a knock against religion or whatever, but like, it was never what would Jesus do? Like when I do the right thing, it's what would Superman do? And more what would Clark do? Right. Because, you
Yeah.
tie it all the way back to the little thread you left loose out there a while ago, right? Of like Smallville, the TV show, is like the encapsulation of why I love Superman, right? And it is Clark Kent. And like you say, the reason we're having so many different conversations, and I'm in love with this podcast. The reason Superman is boring to people, the reason Superman is this, is that to get into Superman and truly understand why he's so awesome takes work. It takes work, because when you look at him, and especially when you're a kid, he can fly, he can shoot lasers, he can super strength, like he's invulnerable to everything. Like that is cool on a power level, right? Then you get older and you want stories, and you've already put into your head, well, Superman's just this alien who can do anything. He's boring. And then you get the fact of like, well, Batman is a guy. Everything is an uphill struggle for Batman, right? To make this happen. And it's incredible that he does what he does, which is true. You got to start with Clark on this. And it's exactly what you're talking about. You got to start with the fact that not even alien extraterrestrial, he's just an outsider, right? Like he feels this his entire life. He doesn't get to fit in. And I think, you talk about our fiction reflecting our realities and stuff like that. And the sacrifices he has to make, and the conversations he has to make, and the pain he has to go through for that, and like the secrets he needs to keep and why he needs to keep them and stuff to that a thing. Like I think so much of that is tied in of, you talk about naming your son Connor, like, and I asked if your wife likes Superman, right? Like it was that thing of like, knee-jerk reaction when it came around the time for me to start thinking of names. Yep, Connor was on that list.
Yeah.
More importantly, Jonathan was on that list, because I think back to, I don't know what it says about me or anything like that, but I think, I Smallville gets announced like my junior year high school, maybe senior year. It starts before I go to Mizzou.
I was gonna say, I think we are 4 years apart, right? Like you
Yeah.
were starting college as Smallville was starting. I happen to be starting high school,
Okay.
so this is really contemporary for me.
Right. And so, yeah, I guess actually, it would have been announced, and maybe it started and then ended my freshman year, the season 1, because I remember the tornado stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
sophomore year, I didn't watch any of it. Sophomore year, a friend in an Antler booth was like, "Oh my God, you would love Smallville," and he was able to give me the first 2 seasons, and just to sit there and marathon them and then go back through, because you know how you watch content in college when you just have, you know what I mean, to do it all over again, like that was the interpretation of like, oh my God, like. Not, I've read it a million times, but to see it, right, of like, oh, John Schneider's John Kent, right? You know what I mean? Annette O'Toole's Martha. Like, these are parents in a community I would love to live with and live in this community and stuff like that. And so I think so much of it's tied to, obviously I already love Superman. I already love the mythos, but being away from home, being in Missouri, which is very similar to Kansas. I won't ever say that again, but very similar to Kansas. You know what I mean? Being in Columbia, which is this like cool happening, urban spot in a rural state. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff going on there that was like, oh man, this is great. Let alone the fact that I'm missing home. I'm homesick and I'm missing my parents and everything I've known for 18, 19, 20 years. And so to have that relationship through those characters, through Clark and through that stuff, let alone then wrestle with all the superpowers and things like that, that was amazing and that was impressive. And so again, to do the work on Superman, right, to get past just the flashy costume and powers, it is this character. It is Clark Kent. And when you say Clark Kent, I think most people jump to, because he killed it, Christopher Reeve, giant glasses, you know what I mean? Slicked over hair, being a nerd.
The,
Oh, well,
the bumbling, like, oh God.
And I don't think of Clark that way. Like I think of Clark Kent as a normal person, a human being, right? And obviously he's not a human being, but a person that is like struggling in high school and college. And that was one of the things I remember growing up, why I loved Lois and Clark so much, is that it was awesome to see Dean Cain be a normal Clark Kent. He wasn't this bumbling idiot, right? He was just a guy, and it was a reference that he
struggle
was
to make like a story for the paper, things like that. Like he actually had like real life shit he was going through.
Yeah, and like that was, refreshing again after being raised on Christopher Reeve, who I adore, and I'll never talk shit about the Superman movies. But what I do say is like the reason Superman isn't more over now, right? The reason it's such a struggle to get people behind him is in a lot of ways those movies, because they were so well done and so iconic that boom became Superman. And it's the same thing you see now with MCU, where it's like, I think we had a conversation briefly on one of the podcasts probably a year ago now, but like, is the MCU now what Marvel is to people, right? Because, for the longest time as comic book fans, it's been, oh, well, we have the comic books and we love the comic books. And then these movies happen every so often and that's cool. But the comic books are the real thing. And now with MCU, I kind of feel like we've gone through the looking glass where it's like the MCU is people's Marvel. And they, I remember going back home we watched Endgame at midnight in San Francisco, or 9 p.m. or whatever, San Francisco, woke up and flew to Chicago for whatever from family function. And when we landed, my cousins were like, let's go see Endgame tonight. And in the car ride over there, my cousin who has 2 adult daughters now, who, when I was a kid playing with my superhero toys, did not care, didn't understand, never read a comic in her life. She's sitting there just ranting and raving with theorizing about what's going to happen and what if they kill Iron Man, that's going to be a problem. Blah, blah. And I was just like, holy shit, like you are into this in the way I'm into it. And not it, but comics. You know what I mean? Like this means that much to you.
And so now it's on a greater scale as well, totally. Right? Like having like normal people just had that conversation, and like us struggling in the 90s and early 2000s to be like, I had a friend who saw me read a comic book in high school, and he was like, you're reading Green Lantern? I'm like, do you know who Green Lantern is? He's like, yeah, I love Green Lantern. Like, is this Kyle? I'm like, oh yeah, I love Kyle. Kyle's my favorite. Like things like that. Like now everyone's just like, it's like people talking about it at work. Like I go to work now and people are like, hey, did you see Hawkeye? I'm like, yeah, Hawkeye's amazing and all this stuff. Did you see Peacemaker? It's like, no. Like, why?
No. It's really good though. You should watch it.
It's so good.
We're getting out into like the stratosphere of like, these little things, right? It's like, you have these performances and these things that happen, and like Superman is defined by Christopher Reeve. And while those are great movies, there's Silver Age Superman, who is unbeatable, who can like, when you have a hero who can rewind time, and again, like this movie's so ahead of its time, it's breaking ground, it's got special effects. Like I understand, I'm not talking shit about it, but like he can rewind time. I was like, all right, well, stakes are pretty low for anything happening in his world, let alone like his journey barely makes sense, right? Like how do you look at that? Like as it's going through in the chat right now, and I'm not making fun of anybody, I never would. Root Boy Root says, what makes Superman special is that Clark Kent is the suit he has to put on. Superman is who he is. Like get that fucking Kill Bill bullshit out of here. That's another one that I fucking hate. And it's I forget who it was who brought it up when I was talking shit about this. They were like, well, what's so fascinating about this is that Bill is the bad guy of the movie. He's giving you a bad take of Superman through his lens, and nobody stops to critical think that. Like he's giving you the wrong take on purpose. Tarantino knows he's giving you a bad take on Superman, but nobody's like, it's such a great performance, and it makes so much sense because that's how people
you start thinking about it. Yeah, it gets in your head.
Like what makes Superman special is that Superman is Clark Kent, and he wants to do the right thing. And if Clark Kent didn't have powers, he would still be trying to do the right thing. He would still pull over on the side of the road to help you with your car. He would still, like, honestly, and I'm not even saying this because he's on the call, and I don't know how much you want to involve anybody else. Maybe don't say anything. But like Clark Kent in so many ways, and Superman in so many ways is Kevin Coelho. Kevin Coelho, if tonight at 3 a.m. the pipes burst, I can call Kevin and he will be here at 3:30 to help us. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm talking about in terms of a mentality and a person who like puts others above themselves, and what makes Clark. And Superman just allows him to do that on a larger scale. And I think that's the most special, iterations you see of him, right? When there are these things where you get to see that it is just him going out there and doing it. Like, there's so many great ones. And I know like when Suicide Prevention comes around, there's the 2 different ones that always go around from, Straczynski's line and the All-Star Superman. But there's an unmade script by Kevin Smith for his Superman one, right? The one where he has to fight a fucking metal robot because the producer
wants fucking it. Cool. Yeah.
But there's an amazing scene that he wrote in there, right? Where like, I think it's a kid out on a ledge covered in spaghetti or whatever. And like Superman bops over and saves him and like gets the thing and looks at him like, that's good. He's like, my mom made it. He's like, my mom made the suit or whatever. And even to go to more contemporary, like right now with Lois and Superman and Lois,
Mm.
like the Tyler Hoechlin thing, right, where he shows up and does the Golden Age,
Just
puts the
first
car
5
down.
minutes. Yep.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh man,
Oh
it's a
my
great suit.
god.
Thanks, my mom made it." Boom.
Yeah,
It's like
it just shoots up. I
that's what we're
literally was in
talking about.
tears. Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's one of the few times that they got it right. And Tyler has an amazing section in one of the Supergirl episodes, and they just come off the elevator, and Kara and him are like giggling, and they're just being family, and it's adorable, and they're human basically for all
yeah,
intents and purposes. Like you mentioned, like those are the takes I like as well. They are walking, and Clark bumps into somebody. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And Kara goes, oh, are you doing that because like you're in Clark mode? He's like, no, I literally bumped into that person. I'm
yeah,
really
yeah,
sorry. Like
yeah,
he's not playing the bumbling buffoon. He's having fun with his cousin, just BSing about like people trying to shoot him in the face. And why are they using guns always?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
he's taking selfies right after and all this stuff.
Yeah,
Like
God, the winter
he's,
selfies thing. Yeah.
I love that. That whole just first like 5 minutes of that show was so perfect for me because he was like, yeah, oh thanks, my mom made it. It's just so happy. He's smiling for the first time. We haven't seen a Superman smile in a
A
very
long
long
time. Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
And he's supposed to make you feel like at ease, right? Like Blue Beetle has a line in Infinite Crisis or the prelude to Infinite Crisis where he's investigating the whole checkmate thing and
Sure.
Max Lord. And Superman drops down to see if he needs help with something and they fight something. And he was like, man, he's like, his mere presence brings fear and hope.
Mm,
And he
mm.
is like, he's like, he feels less and more of himself. Like he feels like he could do anything at that moment just for Clark being there. And at the same time, he's like, oh my God, but he's Superman. But he's also like just Clark, like just this guy. And he just puts everyone at ease. Like that's one of those things I love about Superman.
And that's the thing that's so hard to wrap your head around. And again, there, we can cherry pick all these great Superman stories
Mhm.
and moments, and there's so much bad where
Yeah.
he's in space and he's fighting these things forever, and he's the president of the galactic. What? And it's like, all right, like that's so
Yeah.
tough to do it, right? But like, you know. One of the things I think that and not that they got anything wrong, but like the DCEU Superman, I love Cavill. I think he fits the
Yeah.
bill so well and has a great
I agree.
performance. I think that like they give him not much to work with in certain areas. You know what I mean? But
True.
like the Jor-El speech, right? Of like, you'll give them an ideal to strive for, and they'll stumble and they'll fall, but they'll join you in the sun or whatever. Is another great example of what it's all about, right? Like, I mean, it's
Mhm.
meant to be that, like, yeah, he's supposed to inspire you. You're supposed to see him doing good, and then go, man, in a situation like I'm talking about, what would Superman do? You know what I mean? Somebody needs help on the road. There's a big thing of trash you could just pick up and throw away that's 2 feet from the can, like that kind of shit. Where it's like,
Yeah.
that's not what would Superman do. That is what would Clark do, because that's what the Kents would do, and that's what he was taught to do in Smallville. And that's how he was raised. And he was raised, to take care of other people and think of other people and be empathetic and be great. And I think that's why, like, I love Superman and Lois, because it does what I don't think you see a lot of, and that's let Superman, aka but Clark, fail. And
Yeah.
like him navigate being a father and also navigate being a partner and get it wrong. Cause guess what? Like, even though he's not, he's human. Like, that's the point of this, right? Is like, we
Mhm.
all think of Superman, because of interpretations you've read or whatever, as this God on earth that's never going to do any wrong, or never, can rewind time and shit. But you get into these interpretations where he is struggling with trying to, be a dad to 2 boys, right? And one of the boys is displaying powers, but that automatically alienates the other boy. But then he's afraid of the boy getting the powers, because now you have to go and tell a teenager. I think he's a freshman in high school,
Yeah, I
sophomore, or
believe they're
whatever.
freshmen.
But
Yeah.
you have to go tell that kid of like, you can't be on the football team, you can't do this, you have to pull back on that. And shit, it's a Smallville, of course, where Jonathan was having those same things, but that's why
Yeah.
it works so well to see these people build on that.
Yeah, I agree, and especially going back to what you were talking about, like when Smallville starts, I'm starting freshman year, right? And I've
Yeah.
always loved Superman growing up. They had a bodega around the corner from me where I grew up, and they had like Superman comics, and the dude always recommends Superman. He loves Superman, so I
Yeah.
started loving Superman and all that stuff. So Smallville comes, it's the same week, I believe, or a week after, right? 9/11 is when Smallville
Oof.
starts,
That would make even more sense why I totally missed it when I did not
right?
give it the time of day.
Yeah, it's like right after everything happens, and um, I just started freshman year of high school. This is a new
Sure.
school. I don't know who I am. Like, I'm trying to figure out who is Carlos, right? I don't know any of this stuff. I'm meeting new people for the first time. I'm nervous. I have depression. I have anxiety. Stuff that I find out later on in life, but I don't know at the time. And
Man, I'm just bummed out all the time.
yeah,
Well, gotta go to
why
school.
why does my mom keep telling me I'm crazy? And Clark starts school and he's scared.
Yeah.
He's scared of starting high school, and I'm scared of starting high school. I'm like, oh my God, wait, hold on. If Superman's scared, And that's when it clicked for me for a lot of things. Oh my God, wait, hold on. He is just a person. Like seeing him as a kid
Sure.
and going through all those trials and tribulations that you do, like it was awesome to see that. And then shout out by the way to my wife because she's amazing. She let Lifehouse be our wedding song,
Oh my,
wedding dance.
it's you
You
and
know,
me.
I,
Smallville fucking ending songs
it's the
slap.
best.
They are.
Yes,
Joey Noel is not in the
absolutely.
chat room with me. I'm sure she's watching live. Oh my
She
God, you
has
put
to
on a
be. Yeah,
Talon
absolutely.
mix. You put on the Talon mix. You're gonna fucking have a good day.
Exactly, man. Those albums are good, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, so shout out to her. She's fucking amazing, like I always say. But like she had that, and the week of Smallville's prom is the week of my. I went to all boys high school, so Northeast Catholic High, their prom. I'm on prom committee. It's a Catholic school, and my mom's horrible with money, so I don't get to go to prom because we owe Catholic school money.
Sure.
And they tell me the day of prom, hey, you can't
Always
go.
cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
thanks, father, whoever. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, I don't get to go. I'm home and I'm just bummed. And Clark's like, I'm not going to prom. Da da da. All this stuff. And Jensen Ackles is being handsome as shit over there and taking Lana. But like he
No, not
goes.
yet. It's Whitney. Whitney's who's there right there.
Whitney is there. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So
God, I know him. He's my friend. Why can't I think of his name? Eric. Fuck. Hold on. Johnson. Johnson.
Eric Johnson. Yeah.
Sam
Yeah,
Fisher
so-
in the Splinter Cell.
yeah, he was a good one too. That voice wise. And yeah, so I have this and like Lex gets Lifehouse to play the Smallville prom, the senior prom, and I'm just sitting there like it like clicked for me as I'm like playing Doom 3 for like the 100th time because I'm bored at home. And so shout out to my wife because she lets me do that later on, and I get to have my dance with my Lana or my Lois, whoever it is, you know.
You gotta be
And
careful there.
yeah,
You're my
Lois.
Lana. Wait a second. Who's coming later?
Shit. And so I get to do this all later and everything's awesome. And those 4 years initially with Smallville, I'm like, wow, man, like Clark's going through stuff that I'm going through. And it's weird and awesome to grow up with Smallville at the same time he's growing up. And now, as a father of two, I have Lois and Superman, who's Clark struggling with being a father of two. Now, mind you, they're 4 and 2, but still, like, I have my doubts, and then I start realizing, oh my God, like parents aren't infallible; they're just people. Because I'm just a person. Like, oh wait,
Isn't
Clark's
that
just a
terrifying?
person. Yeah, isn't it? Like, it's so scary. Like every little thing they do is awesome and bright and fun and scary all at the same time. And Clark's going through the same thing, and I just find it how amazing it is. Like Superman's always been a part of my life when I need it most, and in the way I need it to be.
For sure.
And it's just I feel like we've had similar things. As you mentioned on like a previous episode, I think it's Game Over Greggy or Gregway, maybe.
I do a lot of Superman content.
I wrote them down. I already forget. I think it's Gregway episode 25. Damn. Yeah, I wrote it down.
That's some research, and I appreciate it.
So you mentioned like it was similar for you for college and stuff like that, going through that, and then what always interests me as well, and why I started following Kind of Funny. Like I watched you on Beyond. Yeah. Love Beyond everything, and I followed you guys for Kind of Funny. And you told a story, right? About you just mentioned it a bit ago about the religion aspect, right?
Sure.
Same thing. Kindergarten to 12th grade, 13 years, suit and tie, like whatever, like all this crap, going through Catholic school. It's rough, but it's funny for you because knowing Kind of Funny, watching Kind of Funny forever, you've had a good relationship with your parents. I did not, unfortunately. I had a pretty rough relationship with my mother. Her partner was amazing to me, and I shout out to her. I named my daughter after her, like middle names like after her. That's specifically. Awesome. Didn't get to meet my dad growing up. Now I have my siblings who, unfortunately he's passed, but like I have my siblings and all this stuff. So out of all of that, I had a rough upbringing, and I used to joke around. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, like you're so awesome!" All this stuff. I'm sounds like a brag. I'm really not. But
cool,
I used to say,
they used to say that. It wasn't me.
Yeah. I used to say, well, I was raised by Jonathan, Martha, and May, and they're like, "Who?" I'm like, Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, and May Parker raised me, and I got my ideals from them. Like, again, 13 years of Catholic school, you think something would fit, right? And like, what would Jesus do? No, I think the same thing. I always think, what would Clark do? Because he's that like pantheon. Like that's to me his greatest superpower. It's just he's good.
Kindness.
He's
Yeah.
just a good man. Yeah,
Yeah.
just the kindness. And I think Mark Waid, writer Mark Waid, he has a thing where he always carries some sort of Superman memorabilia or something with him, like whether it be a keychain or something, where he has like big meetings or something, because it's like a calming thing for him to have the S with him.
For sure.
I did that permanently, and I have a tattoo.
Nice.
So I have the Superboy tattoo because I love Connor and growing up with that and everything like that. I always carry that with me, as like kind of pointed thing. Like I want to not be anxious all the time. I don't want to be like depressed. And so I look down at my arm and I'm like, oh, that's right. I have hope with me at all times.
For sure.
There's always this like sliver of hope. I always find it interesting with that and like interpretations, and it's just Smallville. We could talk about Smallville forever. It's 20
Sure.
like 21 years now.
Outrageous.
I know, it's insane. I don't feel that old, but I think I
Yeah,
am.
no, that's when you start looking back at it that way,
Yeah.
for sure. Don't feel that old.
So kind of pivoting off of that, I wanted to ask a question. It's more of a comic book question. So
Sure.
how do you stack Kingdom Come, Superman, American Alien,
Uh-huh.
bad person aside, just
Right.
material?
Yeah. Well, for this conversation, we'll separate the art from the artist.
Exactly. just for this, just literally one conversation. And Last Son. How would you
Oh man.
stack them up?
Well, it's funny in the chat. Obviously, first off, promote your podcast again. Where can people find you, Carlos?
Oh, yes. YouTube.com. I don't have a custom URL yet, but you can just search Nerd Today Podcast, and you'll find my stuff there. I got a new logo with like this face and like the sacred symbols on it. It's awesome. Check me out. And then I also have a wrestling podcast, Apron Work Podcast. So follow me over there.
Xander Bradley in the Twitch chat said, "I've never read a Superman comic because I don't know where to start. Anyone have any good recommendations on graphic novels to begin with?"
Ooh.
You bring up obviously what would be my incredibly short list. I would say you start with American Alien because I think it does such a great job of doing what we're talking about through 10 seasons of Smallville into one graphic novel. Now, what was it? 8 issues? I think it was 8 issues.
I believe so. Yeah.
Of going through and being like, here are pivotal moments in Clark's life. And again, him feeling like an alien, like an outsider, and what they did and what he learned and how he became who he is in like a very modern context of what it would be, right? Like there's that scene I had never thought of, but is in the book, right? Where when Pete and Kenny come to visit Metropolis and Clark picks him up and they're like, oh man, and he's wearing the glasses, like, oh man, so you can never take your glasses off. He's like, no, I take them off all the time. What do people say? They say you look a lot like that guy Superman, because no one would think Superman's sitting next to them on the subway, right?
Yep.
Like,
and he's a big cheeser as he's saying it too. I love that.
Yeah,
moment.
no, totally. And like there's such a great thing, and like, him crying fighting Lobo, his first giant fight, and he cries because like there's all these people who just got killed, and it definitely resonates with me, right? Because when I'm angry, I cry. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
So
same.
I think American Alien from the 3 you just gave is the great introduction to it, because I think that it's like, here's why we love Superman in a condensed format of what's going on, right?
Mm.
Then I would put Last Son. Last Son's a book I've talked about a bajillion times, and I will always talk about it. This is the one with Jeff Johns, but he brought in Richard Donner to work on it with him, who's the director of the Superman films we were talking about earlier. And the idea here is that, it's in continuity at the time, but it does, or I guess it was happening in action at the time. They never make a big deal about it. But like it could be seen as a sequel to the Superman movies that came before, or if you've never watched them, that also doesn't matter. Clark and Lois are together. They're married. They can't have a kid because, of course, he's an alien. So they've struggled with that, and they've done this whole thing. And then guess what? A Kryptonian boy falls to Earth in a spaceship. And it's this journey between them of, we'll turn him over to the government. Government's, of course, a bunch of jerks. They take him back. They try to raise him. Then it turns out there's tied into Zod and Ursa and all this other stuff. It's a great run, and it's a great book, but it is a snapshot of where I'm at as an adult, right? Like, I think that's the importance thing of it, of like, you have American Alien being the start of really Clark. That's Clark. That's a Clark book. You know what I mean? It's not a Superman book. And then Last Son being a Clark book as well, but obviously he's in the cape and the entire time, the shield. You know what I mean? And then Kingdom Come is advanced reading. I learned a lesson with that one where when I was doing Greg's comic book club on Patreon, I put that out there as required reading for 1 month, and we'd come back and book club it or whatever. And that's great if you already are a comic book fan and have read a lot, but Kingdom Come is dense, and it brings in all sorts of characters that are amazing to see if you know the what at the time, what was it, 75 years of DC legacy. Now
Yeah.
you were almost on, what is it, 80 something, 82, something like that.
Yeah, something
Doesn't
like that.
matter.
82.
Uh, but like that's a lot to get into, and it also, I think, for most of the book, reinforces the I'm Superman and I'm super invulnerable. I'm not exciting to watch, and it's not until you get deeper into the book and then see what happened with Lois and the Joker and see where he's at that you're like, oh no, this is him hurting as Clark. You know what I mean? He's turned over to be Cal because he's trying to say Clark's dead to him and he's left humans behind, but he really hasn't. He can't do that. But that's like a lot to take on. And that's like, we're talking about like intro to Superman, mid-level
Yeah.
Superman, and then advanced studies.
It's like college courses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would
right
sprinkle a little. Yeah, that sounds right. And I would sprinkle a little, for me, personally, one of my favorite books is All-Star Superman. That's though the issue
with
with
3 to rank. You see, he gave me 3 to rank.
Oh,
He
yeah.
didn't say bring in other things.
Well, that's extra credit.
Okay.
I'm adding the extra credit. I'm the teacher's assistant. I'm adding
My apologies.
So yeah, All-Star Superman I would throw in there. And that's him like uber powered though. That is the unfortunate thing, because he's just way to the middle of the sun and soaked up too much rays. But that suicide scene alone and the just beginning, it's the easiest like interpretation of like, hey, this is Superman. You're like dying planet, kindly couple. I forget what the third panel is, but just 3 panels just to explain this is Superman's origin.
You Lois something, right? Is it like her like this?
I think so. Yeah, it's like said about Lois, obviously, because it should be. That's the love of his life. But yeah, that suicide scene especially, like that was one of those things that always resonated with me. Just like reinforced, like, yeah, it's not a Superman thing. He doesn't need to punch anything. He just needs to be there for somebody. And just hugging her, just giving her what she needs at that one moment. It's I remember crying, like reading that. I was like, wow, what the hell, man? Then it has some goofy shit at the end. As some
but
Superman.
again, there's a great moment in there or whatever. It's the same thing with Grounded, the Michael J. Straczynski.
Where he's just like walking across.
Yeah, but there's the one where he walks. The idea is he's walking across America. He's trying to get grounded to the people again because of whatever giant event had just happened. And yeah, he gets to where there's a jumper on the ledge. And he eventually goes up there, and it's like this great multi-page scene of him just hovering in the air. And she's like, I'll talk to you, but you have to promise that if I jump, you won't grab me because you never tell a lie, right? And he's like, okay. And so he stands up there or flies up there just with her, and like, there's a great thing where like it turns into night like through these multiple panels, and then they put on the spotlight. She's like, that hurts my eyes, and it's just the next panel is him heat visioning the cord to cut it to stop the light or whatever, and it's like. He talks her down, and it is that, if you can convince me that, you'll never have a good day again or whatever, then I'll let you go. But I think, you will. And he does that. And again, that's Superman, right? Of like, to get back to center on like why he's inspiring and why he does this. Like, I think it's not lost that every day people in power abuse their power. And you know what I mean? And it just seems like it happens all the time, no matter what. Every motherfucking politician, something's happening, right? You know what I mean? Like there's always something going on somewhere. You've seen it so much with, every position of authority in America. It feels like I won't even start naming them because I will be here all day with it. But
just assume everyone.
The one thing you're drilled into in school, right, is absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And you have this character in Superman who time and time again refutes that. Like, you know what I mean? Clark could take over the world. He could go get every nuclear missile. He could throw them into the sun. He could do all this different stuff. And, there's lots of great, I almost said fiction. Like there's nonfiction.
It's real.
There's great interpretations where he does that. And you see that, blah, blah. But like, for me, it's way better to see somebody who is pushed and pulled in a million directions and is able to, stay center and stay true just by trying to do good. And yeah, he fucks up and he makes mistakes, and, we all do. That's part of it, right? But it's about your character. It's about your thing. It's about who you are to come back to center with it.
Yeah, I highly agree with that as well. And kind of going off of, talking about comics specifically, how are you caught up to date with Tom Taylor's run on Superman, Son of Earth, or no, Son of
Superman, Son of Kor. No, I have them. It's that thing where like I think on this Snowbike Mike brought it up the other day on stream. Like, what have you been reading comics? I'm like, nothing. Yeah, like my iPad is filled to the brim, like storage property problems of the stuff I'm way behind on, and like I keep up. Like Tom's a friend. I see everything he's doing on Twitter. I drop in, I read his articles, his interviews and stuff like that. And I see, so I haven't, been up to date with any of the books, but yeah, the big question I have, because you're caught up, right?
Yeah.
I was so like again, 2021 was a rickrolling year of like
Uh,
time disappearing on me, and I had to start shutting things down to make sure I'm playing games and taking care of my pregnant wife, and then taking care of my son. What I don't know is how Bendis's run ends. Did they reset reality? Does everyone still know Clark is Superman?
yeah, yeah.
They do. Okay,
Everyone
cool.
still knows Clark is Superman, which it's funny because you pitched that as an
Yeah,
idea. Oh
fucking
my god.
Bendis ripping me off. I know
Yeah,
he would
exactly. I
do
was
it.
gonna say this is all right. I have it right here. Game Over Greggy episode 215 from January 12th, 2018. That's when you pitched it. Cisco was there and
Yeah,
everything, and that was your idea, right? Like they're writing a book, and eventually your interpretation of it. Which, by the way, just watch that whole episode. That whole episode is amazing, and your pitch is amazing, by the way. Was Lois is writing a book just in case anything were to happen, because God forbid he dies fighting Doomsday again, or for whatever the hell, or God forbid, what's the name? Jonathan doesn't have
a
any
father.
recollection. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, he's like too young when he's lost. That there's some kind of story of what to tell, and then it gets out and all this other stuff, and then you end it with them like what Lois calling her publisher at the time and
yeah,
be like,
yeah. They
"Hey,
decide they're
I
going
got
to
a
reveal his
story."
identity.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I.
Which,
How
by
do
the
you
way,
feel about?
you
Uh,
bring that up. I want you to
yeah,
know. I think one of the cool things is, me and Gary put that in for the Batman story
I
when
saw
we were
that.
sitting there pitching the
Yep,
Batman thing, right? Like that. Everything you just said is
yep.
boiled down to that one frame we workshopped and Gary wrote, but of Alfred being like, I wanted the world to know my son. I wanted when
Mhm.
he's letting people into tour the Batcave, he's like, I wanted people to know who my son was.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Like without you guys ever saying it, I kind of picked up on that, like
Yeah,
knowing, like watching the kind of funny stuff. I
yeah.
was like, I bet you this is for that reason alone, because like, he gets to kind of have a Superman story. I mean, do you got beef with Bendis now that he stole your idea? Because that's how I bet you if you look at that chat, he was there.
He
He's
was
like, you know
there. He
what?
was there, just snooping around. Drives me
Yeah,
crazy. No, I don't. I'm glad he did it. I'm
yeah,
glad somebody did it because that's
yeah,
the whole thing, right? Of like, I I love the idea of writing comics. I love the idea of me having a run on Superman or just doing another one shot or whatever the hell it is. You know what I mean? The fact of the matter is, like, it's not my passion. Like, you know what I mean? I've
yeah.
tried before and I've tried a million things, and kind of funny. Talking about video games, talking about, the movies and comics and stuff we love is what I love doing. And
Mhm.
it takes everything I have every day to do it, which I know sounds goofy because it's a dream job and, blah, 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 but it's work and there's a million moving parts to it at any time and all these different things. And it's like, I just don't have the passion to sit down and do that. So I'll send them to you. I wrote like rough scripts. I think 1 and 2 were pretty. I think 1 was pretty much locked the way I wanted it. 2 then starts to get, and then eventually it's just like outline format of what I was doing. But
Oh,
it's
I'm
that thing
down
of
if
like
you wanted to, please.
I did it when it was a slow part of video games in probably 2018. I
Oh,
think that was the New Year's resolution.
yeah, that
And
was
then
your new.
shit got real, and it's like, everything keeps going and keeps spinning and everything. Da, 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 da. And so it's amazing and cool, and like that's why I will forever be in Gary Whitta's debt that he was like, hey, writer of Rogue One, do you want to write a Joker story? And he's like, yes, let me bring my goofy idiot internet friend. He's like, all right, whatever, you know what I mean? Because like that's the way it's the only way it was
Yeah,
ever going to happen, probably. Because I was just like, I loved Bendis's book, Words for Pictures. Is such a great book. And I went
it
to a
is.
friend's house the other day. I was like, oh, you write a comic? I'm like, what do you mean? How did you know? I'm like, well, you got Words for Pictures. Like, you're at least interested in it. And I would encourage anybody just creatively who wants to see it. It's a great book. But, or like, if you're interested in how comics get made. But it was that thing of like reading it and going through it and stuff. And it's so cool, but it's just, yeah, not where my passions lie. So I'm glad, long story short, that Bendis had a very similar idea and did
Yeah,
something with it and ran with it and changed the character and did something cool with it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the most exciting thing about it is like, we talk about like our love of Clark and Lois, our love of Superman. And, he did such a great job of turning the knife before the reveal because, they didn't know it was going to happen. And so, like, if you're not caught up on this run before it,
yeah,
right? Before we knew the his identity was going to be revealed, a picture of Lois kissing Superman got out. And
yeah.
so
Everyone tweeted it out. Yeah,
the
it was
world thought
crazy.
that Lois Lane was cheating on her husband Clark Kent with Superman. And so like there are these issues of like, people calling her a slut and bitch and all this stuff. And like him and her
Her whole
walking and like,
series too is like centered
yeah.
on. It's so good.
I think it's in the series, right? From Greg Rucka, where him and Clark and Lois are walking through the streets because she was in Chicago to give distance to the situation and was like, just wanted to write her book or some
Yeah,
shit. And he goes to visit and he's walking and like Clark can hear the whispers, like not the people who are like literally like, yeah, you fucking jerk, like who are just like
Yeah.
saying shit under their breath about
Oh
this
my God,
film.
is that Lois Lane?
And he's like, you know,
Oh,
I can
yeah.
fix this in 2 seconds. If you, and she's like, no, you can't. And, blah, blah. And like, that is such a great conflict, right? Because it gets back to what I think the best conflicts for Superman are, and that's our interpersonal stuff, right? Like it's the stuff you see. I always go to Bill Roseman from Marvel Games, know better than anybody about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Where whenever we talk about Spider-Man, or whenever I'm hosting a panel he's on and we're talking about Spider-Man, he talks about the best Spider-Man stories are the ones that are Spider-Man and Peter problems. Like it doesn't work, right? When it's like, cool, Superman's got problems at home, but then Metallo's also taking over the Daily Planet. It's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, but we're doing the whole thing where it's dual lives rather than be one life connected, right? And like, sure, okay, he's threatening Perry White, who Superman knows, but it's like that's not as like interesting,
Nah,
really,
it's
right?
interesting. Yeah, like hitting the foundation of their marriage, you know, their parenthood, everything like that. Like that's always the difficult thing. I agree with you on that. And it was funny too because I think Bendis, Rucka, and all they did a good job of like collaborating with having like the Leviathan stuff, which is like huge level like Marvel disrupt. I'm sorry, DC disruptive stuff, but at the same time make it personal where like the Leviathan leader is just constantly attacking. We're like, listen, we can do this. We can reveal who you are and all this other stuff. And then finally, when they reveal that, right, just straight up, like they just own it. And it's such a moment. Like it's one of those things. Like obviously, you're the first person I heard he like say like you should get rid of his identity. And it's such a being a Superman fan. You're like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't do that at all. Like he needs a dual identity. And it's like, wait, hold on, but does he? And then Bendis just literally writing it and running it with him like, no, this is what we need. We need everyone to know.
When I'm watching Man of Steel for the first time, you know what I mean? When he goes to talk to Lois at Jonathan's grave, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like they're just going all in this first film. This is awesome. And then the more it goes, I'm like, oh my God, they're not going to do Clark Kent. And then I go, oh my God, he's on a fucking bike and a tie. God damn it. No. What are you talking about? We just leveled the city. Everyone saw you. What are you doing?
Harry was staring right at you. And Jenny's staring right at you as
he's like, okay, I guess you're a couple, maybe 100 yards away, but come on.
Dude, really? You're making out with Lois Lane right there. We see it. I see it. And it's
that thing of like, you know, and that's another hurdle for so many people, right? As you go through this and like, how would any of this be plausible? And I think again, the MCU does such a great job with it, right? Where they, for the most part, don't. Like obviously, Spider-Man's going through his own thing, but like for the most part, they don't. And it's like such a cool modern way to do it because how would you possibly do this? And so I think it opens up the door to so many more interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. And then just to wrap it up here and get close to the end, wanted to touch on you know, like one of the big things for Tom Taylor is like now John is Superman of Earth.
Yeah.
Him just like taking the legacy title. I love the idea of legacy titles, especially like in Marvel we have like multiple Spider-Man, multiple Hawkeyes. Why not multiple Supermans, Batmans? Now there is that, you know, we have Tim Fox and everything. What do you think? Because I feel like Tom, like knowing Tom's stuff now because of you, like you would like showcasing them and stuff like that. And it's something kind of funny, does amazingly showcasing art, like whether it be comic book, you know, content creators and stuff like that. Again, thank you for this opportunity. One of the things I loved is that, you know, Jonathan is bi, and for a new generation of people, their Superman is LGBTQ, you know, like there's someone that like for my Superman was, like I said, like someone who felt like an outsider and stuff like that. And me, you know, being a person of color, I was like, oh man, I feel like an outsider. I feel like this, like I don't feel good enough, you know, for like white people or whatever and things like that. And it was rough growing up with that and like the racism and stuff I've dealt with in my life. And then to go and have Superman be like, hey man, I feel like I'm an outsider. Like, I don't think anyone likes me and all this other stuff. And like struggle with like a human problem. Now, Jonathan being open and bi and just, I think it's amazing. And I think it's something that Tom has done amazing. Obviously, there's backlash from horrible people, you know, with horrible takes.
Who were never probably reading the comics. Who were armchair quarterbacks who want to be the vocal minority and talk all this shit. I much more appreciated the headline from Polygon, I think this week, that was Bi Superman teamed up with gay Aqualad, and I didn't even notice it was a big deal because like there's so many. The DC is doing a great job of putting so many different people from on the spectrum of personalities and sexualities and races and all this stuff that like it's starting to reflect, shockingly, the real world where you interact all the time with different people. You don't think it's a big deal, but oh, grab
No,
my
yeah.
pearls. Superman might be bi. He wants to kiss a boy. Oh no.
Yeah, how dare Clark? I'm like, no, it's Jonathan. You're not reading,
Yeah,
are you?
exactly. That was the
You
thing
know?
too. Then you see everybody trying to boil the headlines down, right? It's
Yeah.
just like when Superman's not giving up on the American way. He's not going to say that anymore. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of a global world we should be thinking about, right? Are we really that
Exactly.
worried about this?
Yeah, and that
Captain
was all
America said,
propaganda.
"Hail Hydra." Oh my God. Well, come on,
Yeah,
guys.
exactly, man. And I love that that initiative, like changing the wording, like
Mhm.
truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
Better
I feel
tomorrow.
like that is the thing that encapsulate party. That's a terrible way to say that word, but like just boils down.
Skip some syllables.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
do it all the
I'll
time.
skip some stuff. It just boils down who the character Superman is, whether it be Jonathan, whether it be Connor, whether it be super like the House of L, like that symbol means truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. You're supposed to see that and feel hope.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best wordage to have for those characters, like I mentioned, like Connor and everyone else. Did you like? Did Tom reach you because you guys are friends? Like, did he tell you first that like, yo, I'm working on Superman? Because
No,
you
we're
found
not
out
that
the
level
rest.
of friends.
Like,
Like
okay,
Tom
okay.
and I are friends, which is a different level. There's someone else who
Fair.
will remain nameless who is working on something. There's a couple of people who will remain nameless who are working on different things that when I get those texts, it's like, oh shit, fuck. You know
Oh,
what I
okay,
mean?
okay,
Like the
yeah.
things I've seen already. But no, I didn't get any heads up from Tom about all that. But like, because I'm internet friends with Tom in the way like I mean when we used to be able to see each other at Comic-Con, it was huge. You know what I mean? Like I remember Tom talking to him at the. I want to. That probably doesn't track. It was one of the rooftop DC parties for one of the Superman things, and like Cavill was over there in the VIP area, and like we were over there. Like Mike Carlin from DC Comics was in the circle, and I was freaking out because like I had gotten a signed poster from Mike Carlin at Wizard World Chicago in like 1998, and I was like, "Do I tell him this?" I'm like, "No, I'm here as a peer. Let's not nerd out to that level yet."
I did the same thing with like Marv Wolfman at like Wizard World Philly.
Yep.
I've seen him. I'm like, oh, you're the reason why Nightwing's a thing. Obviously, I got the tattoo there as well. And I was like, oh my God, you're the reason. Like he's his own man now. Like that's why I have the tattoo. Like I want to be my own person. And like, I like freaked out. And like, are you gonna meet him? And like, I think the same Comic-Con, it was like Ron Mars was there who created like Kyle Rayner. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm just gonna go this way and bump into David Tennant by accident. I'm okay. Like I'm okay. This is a bad day for anxiety right now. I'm not gonna do this. So I'm gonna leave with a question, and then we'll do the show and tell portion right now. I figured you would appreciate this, Greg. I have props.
Oh, there it is. I remember these. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
God, I have these too. I have these mint on card in my dad's attic right now. Yeah, I had the ones open, and I have mint on card.
I used to have the open ones, and I was looking back on the back. Like, there's the super cycle.
Yeah,
that thing got ruined when I used to take baths at home.
Sure.
Horrible. And then also the pricing, man. KB Toys, $8. That's crazy. So I figured you'd appreciate that.
Way. Oh, I love that. Yeah, you kidding me? Like those were. I remember walking into Walmart the first time and seeing those, and it was like, that was like the thing of like the internet and the immediacy of everything now. Even like, I don't know if Toy Fair existed at the time, so it was like out of the blue. I walked in and there were all these Superman figures on the wall. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, right. And I remember clearly those Justice League figures as well, like Mullet Superman. Oh my God. There was the same body shape, and it didn't matter. I had a Kyle Rayner figure. Like holy shit!
Like that was the Rayner with the arm.
Yep.
Like I remember. My Total Justice ones. Like same thing. I have those mint on card. I have they did a giant JLA box set that had like the special fold up. I had that had like
my God!
It was
I remember
Morrison
this
run where they had the purple like shadow versions. I have those, but that'll always be that like. When that line was being discontinued was when their final breath was they put out some Huntress and Parallax and a couple other like
oh my God
total like not D-listers but people that are way more in the weeds, and it was that thing that they weren't going to any of the toy stores, they were only going to WB Studio stores, and we had a WB Studio store. I want to say it was in like Oakville, Oakland. I don't remember, but it was like 30, 40 minutes away. And I remember after school one day, I found out about this in Toy Fair, maybe Wizard. And like we piled in the car and drove over. Drove over there. And I was like going like a psychopath through them and I got them all off. Shout out to my parents for indulging me in this
Oh my
because again it was
God.
like I bought 2 of each one of these. I need to open. Mom, this is Hal Jordan. He killed all the other Green Lanterns. I needed to do this, but
Yeah.
I need to. They're all
I
probably
need to play
worth
with
a
him, and
grand
I
total
also
of
need him
$7 now.
yeah, exactly. I think I spent because I lost a lot of my stuff as a kid. This was $17 at a comic shop like
Yeah,
outside of
yeah.
Philly, and I was like, I gotta get this. I'm eventually gonna give this. Obviously, my son Connor is like comes into my room. He's like, can I play with that now? I was like, nah, dude, you don't understand like how it
You can't.
works.
You don't appreciate it.
Yeah, you don't appreciate it. It's gonna get ruined. Just please, I bought you this $10 like Nightwing figure. Just destroy that. That you could
Yeah,
destroy. This is for you when you're older, and hopefully you still like Superman
yeah,
and not
right.
think it's weird that I named you after an alien clone. Um, and then just to kind of end with my last question, best voice actor to play Superman and best live action actor to play Superman.
Live action. I'm gonna go Tom Welling. Like again, and I think it is sure. It's I don't know if it's a bias. I mean, that show means so much to me. And don't get me wrong, the overwhelming majority of Smallville is bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's bad
Yeah, that
CW,
witches
Monster of the
episode
Week.
is rough. Yeah,
Oh, God. The Witches season. Season
yeah,
is tough.
I forgot it was a season. Yeah,
But it's the same thing of like, Tom Welling's performance. You do see him go from being, like you're talking about, like we started, a scared kid in high school to being Superman, right?
yeah,
And that is, I don't think you can understate that. And it's grading on a curve because obviously he gets 10 years with the character in 24 episodes a year, so like he's got the time in there. But like
hmm
so many amazing moments are from that, right? Of just like, yeah, I think of like the levity. One of my favorite is when he's gets X-ray vision, right?
Oh,
And Jonathan pulls out and he's like, "What's in my hand?" He's like, "It's your pocket watch." And he goes, "You could see through my hand." And he goes, "No, you just always keep your pocket watch. It's your
yeah,
pocket
yeah,
knife. You always keep your pocket knife in that pocket." And then it's like, the stuff of him on Red Kryptonite or him going through the loss and pain. And like, episode 100 when Lana dies and he's trying to stop
oh
all
my
that. And,
God,
I
yeah,
hate that he rewinds time, but then having to watch
yeah,
his father die. Like, there's this spectrum of emotion there. You get to see the happy ending with Lois. I love that final seasons where, like, again, he time travels to the future, but as young Clark, so he gets to meet future Clark, and it's like there's just so much good shit. But then just have him boom rip open the shirt at the end. It's
Uh,
like, oh my
those
God,
last few seconds, yeah,
you know what I
absolutely
mean? Come on. And then
wonderful.
so voice actor, from there I would go Tim Daly. But again, it's somebody who gets to play with the character a lot. Like I love Superman the animated series, and I think he does
Mhm.
such a great job there. And again, like I'm talking to you right now, and obviously the internet brings us all together. There was a time when I was like, I love Superman so much, and Clark's the real person, and Superman's, just the suit he puts on. And so many people are like, you're wrong, it's stupid, blah, 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 that's a dumb take. And remember episode 1 of Superman the animated series, first thing he does, he shows up and tries to stop that plane, and he grabs it by the tail, like in a classic
Yep.
cartoon, and the tail rips off, and he just goes, "Nice job, Clark." And he flies. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes,
Like
this is
you
fucking
get it,
awesome,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, we won't mention Paris in chat, mentioning that he agrees with Bill from Kill Bill. Like, we're just
Well,
gonna
Paris
ignore
is a
that.
bad guy, just
Yeah,
like Bill is a
that
bad guy
makes
in Kill
sense.
Bill.
Yeah, that's why he's on the XCast.
Yeah,
If you guys
exactly.
ever want me on XCast, though, I'm more than welcome. Just putting myself out there.
I understand. I
Yeah,
respect that.
I think I agree, and I think I worry that partially it's like from our time, like we
Sure.
both grew up with those being super. I wanted to shout out, you know, Jerry O'Connell. I think he did pretty good in the most
He did.
recent like
You're
run
right.
of animated series. I thought he brought a good levity to like what Clark was and Superman. Obviously, they're doing the 52, new 52 Superman.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I was like, all right, this guy
there's a
sucks, but
couple weird
whatever.
storylines there. The animation is amazing and the voice casting is great. But yeah, I thought he did a great job and as well. And it's hard not to agree with like Tom Welling and even so like Michael Rosenbaum.
Oh my
Like
God.
he is truly the greatest representation of Lex. Like
100%.
that dichotomy between like wanting to, be better, get out of the shadow of like Lionel and just struggling. And then finally when he's like, I am the villain,
I am the
that
villain of
line,
this story.
dude,
Fuck
that is
yeah.
the greatest fucking line ever.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I love him so much. And I always loved, obviously we know Kevin Spacey's a piece of shit now. But at the time when there was some interview with Michael Rosenbaum, he goes, so Kevin Spacey says something like, "Oh, you play like Lex and TV." He's like, "How's it feel?" Like I think Michael to Kevin goes, "How does it feel playing the lesser Lex Luthor?"
Yeah.
And in hindsight, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
well,
so
I mean,
much, so many ways.
oh, 100%, right? And like that's the thing is like you can. Gene Hackman is a great actor. Gene
Yeah,
Hackman's is a very a fun Luther to watch, but like
yeah,
it's a boring Luther. They're not making Land anymore, and then they're like, you know what
yeah,
we should do? 20 some years later, let's do the same thing. Like, what the
yeah,
fuck? Why did no one stop you? Why do you have to
yeah.
do this? Yeah,
Yeah. Also, shout out to Brendan Routh, of course. Like
of
I
course.
do love his portrayal, and shout out to John Cryer's been pretty decent in the
Yeah,
CW,
you know what?
which
I
is
did like
weird,
him.
right?
Yeah, well, that's a great. I'm glad that
Superman
again,
4 turned to
totally. And
Lex.
like that's always the thing about it, where like I forget. It's been a while now, but I had that realization probably around Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? Where it was like had that like really heartbreaking, but bittersweet moment, I guess, because you're seeing all this happen, you're seeing all this cool shit. They're bringing in '89 Batman stuff, yada yada yada, and it was that moment of like, man, if Christopher Reeve was still alive, he'd be there. And then now it's like, man, if Christopher Reeve was still alive, we would get Kingdom Come. He would be in this Flash movie. We wouldn't. It's like, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And like you see that mock up every so often go through of like somebody who did put the grays in his hair and put the thing on it. And I was like, oh my god, that looks good.
Looks so good. But yeah, we'll wrap it there. So, Greg, I mean, reiterate again for I guess my viewers, where can everyone find you?
You can find me over at youtube.com/kindafunny and youtube.com/kindafunnygames. You can go to kindafunny.com as well to get it all there.
All right. And for me, my name is Carlos. If this is the first time you're watching a Nerd Today podcast, follow me. Again, just search youtube.com. You search me, Nerd Today podcast. You'll find me almost at 100. So,
Woo.
hopefully I get there and then I get a custom URL, and that would be youtube.com/nerdtoday. Hopefully no one steals that. Actually, I should have said that out loud. But
don't do the thing where people do it like, I'll camp on it for you. Like, no, that doesn't work. That fucks everything up. Don't do that.
Yeah, there's someone on Twitter that just has Nerd Today all one word and has never posted ever, and they established it in 2009, and I hate it because I have underscores. I'm like, damn it, I'm Nick Scarpino now.
Ugh.
Son of a bitch.
Who wants to be Nick?
Exactly. But yeah, you can find me there on YouTube. I'm on an audio podcast as well, and twitch.tv/nerdtoday. I will probably in the future start streaming. I'm just get some funds to get some Elgato stuff, and then I'm off to the races on that one. But thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for everything, always being amazing as always. And I'll probably reiterate what everyone's going to say, after me. Dude, this is one of the best things I think Kind of Funny does, is like highlighting people, community. Like if I was able to find who Daniel Pena was, Mario Rivera, Kevin Diaz, like all Elaine Gomez, like all these amazing people, like Blessing, all that stuff, man.
Sorry
it's
about
just
Blessing.
Yeah, I don't like that he makes fun of me for the French toast thing, or as I mentioned, the grilled cheese with the syrup thing. But I'll it's cool. He's got a job now.
All's forgiven now.
All's forgiven now. It's cool seeing Barrett, like all these people from the community, get uplifted. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, man. Keep it up, all right?
All right.
All right, bye.